SuperTalk Mississippi media production. Middays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. Middays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Middays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this
Friday, y'all.
All right, it has transitioned from desert arid conditions to monsoon rainforest conditions, like in a week. Good grief, a little chilly out there as well. This is May 1st, right?
It is.
Man, May Day. Well, of course, to the leftists in this country, it is a day of protest and activism, out and about in full force.
Like they need an excuse.
It's true. So today, the expectation is that there are some 600 groups organizing. The number is really kind of unclear at this point. 3,000 to 5,000 individual protests across the country. Some $2 billion powering this? And what they're protesting is capitalism, billionaires. This is the Democrat Socialist of America, a People's Forum, the Party for Socialism and Liberation, Answer Coalition, and Code Pink. They're protesting working conditions. Really? Working conditions? Capitalism, billionaires, and of course the Trump administration's crackdown on illegals. They ain't happy about that. What is even more galling, first that this is happening across this country, is incredible to me. Do they not have history books in the schools? Apparently not, where they could perhaps review what has happened in the past at such attempts to implement these. Really, it's more than socialism they seek. They really want communism. That is what they want. And you've even got, what's the big news outlet in the UK? They're even writing about the fact that there is a movement in this country among young people towards socialism. No secret there. That's been building up for some time, but it seems to have even gotten worse recently. It really is abhorrent. All these leftist groups, I didn't even know there were 600 leftist groups in this country. The Chicago schools, they're encouraging schools. They are encouraging their students to attend these events, protesting capitalism, protesting wealth. This is, of course, the Chicago Teachers Union and the NEA. They're pushing a May Day protest curriculum. Even had a webinar on it. to explain the purpose, the narrative.
Jerome Powell's boring.
That's true. But perhaps the most egregious example, Madison, Wisconsin. That, of course, the capital city of the dairy state of Wisconsin. The whole dang school district's closed down today. The schools are closed today because so many of the teachers and the administrators decided to take the day off so they could go protest. So the kids are pawns in their twisted agenda. Kids. It's, what is it? No work. This is how they've dubbed today's protest. No work, no school, no shopping. No shopping because they're protesting capitalism. Now, they don't have
you want to bet they bend that last rule a bit.
100%. So, of course, once again, we have to point out that they're using the goods and services produced by capitalism to promote their anti-capitalist message. The same deal. So they said even more people are showing up in Chicago, downtown, and in Madison, Wisconsin. I saw a video of these educator protesters circling the Capitol there in Madison, Wisconsin, with their signs, their little signs, and they all got these little red shirts on. Gosh, there's a Rainbow Push Coalition. It's just one of the many that are holding May Day events, all ending today in Chicago with a rally and a march from Union Park to Daley Plaza.
Well, unless they made their own paper, harvested their own wood for picket sticks, manufactured their own paint, and made their own signs, then they played a part in capitalism just having their stupid little sign made.
That's exactly right, 100%. So they say that buses in Chicago will be provided for those who want to go to the different events that are focusing on topics like voting and workers' rights, expanding democracy, not corporate power. So no shock, the parents are voicing their concerns. Can't we just focus on teaching math and reading?
Well, no, math's racist, remember?
Oh, that's right. Certainly working to obtain the right answer. That for sure, that's racist. But aren't the educational outcomes in Chicago like the worst in the country? And they spend like $30,000 a student per year. But yet they're going to go put their efforts into protesting what made this country great. What enables them to even have schools to teach in. They don't get that second order thinking for sure. Oh my gosh. It's just incredible that this is happening to me in this country. And what really perturbs me again is the fact that they are using children as pawns. They're literally putting immigrants, illegal immigrants, I might add, in front of the needs of citizen students. It's absolutely true. And that's disgusting. But they don't care whatsoever. And I don't know, am I thinking a little too far out of the box to say maybe this is even a more compelling reason why we need education freedom in this country? Sure feels like that justifies it. Now, I know people are saying, well, we don't have that problem in Mississippi. I don't know. Do we? The way I've seen some people...
We do in higher ed.
There's no doubt. That's well established, right? So, of course, you do have a choice, but you can't do that in K through 12, only in above that, right? So I don't really get that. But these are really foolish people that are, again, using the fruits of capitalism to spread their misguided message. 600 leftist groups are organizing today. And the UK publication, this is just in the last day or two, The Times, young Americans are surging to socialism at record rates. That's just incredible. You wouldn't expect to see that from a media outlet in the United Kingdom. 62% expressed favorable views of socialism in some recent surveys. Cato YouGov survey conducted within the last year says Americans between the age of 18 and 29 have a favorable view. That's because they're being taught by people who lie to them. This is the bottom line. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
At Fillmore Buick GM.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Bring it on!
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on!
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
We are back in the Element Wealth studio. The great CCR, Born on the Bayou. That is a staple in the house band set. Love playing that on the drums, by the way. Really good tune. Yep, Socialists Day for the left-wing nutcases across the country. Again, schools across this country shut down to allow these nutcase people in these schools. It's just so disturbing to me that they are teaching our children. They're indoctrinating our children. Thus, these recent polls showing that young people between 18 and 29 view socialism as favorable. Incredible. There's a Maine, have you seen this? A Democrat Senate primary has a Nazi tattoo. Praises Hamas, has some rape post controversies. Graham Plattner, he says he's running for U.S. Senate. He's got a Nazi tattoo. That's where we are in this country.
Well, he did. He got it covered up after he was catching some political flack.
Okay.
But he had it proudly for a decade, I think.
And so that's okay? The Democrats are okay with that? Evidently, right?
If it weren't for double standards, Democrats wouldn't have standards at all.
Oh, man. So, you're so right about that. You know, I did, on my social media, I did point out this day as being one of protests across the country in favor of socialism. And so, there's a person that responded and said, well, you need sourcing on the 600 groups and several thousand events. And of course, it's clear that this individual used one of the generative AI tools to create their comment, right? You know, you can pick them out, can you not? There's a certain style. And it's because it's all math. And it's very repeatable. I don't think people get that. underneath the cover of these content generation tools is statistics and prediction models, predicting what are the next words. That's how it works. That's why it's so easy to identify. The other thing, of course, is that person doesn't talk like that, right? You can see that. Oh, my gosh. And look, we have people that are seated in the Mississippi State Capitol. You know that use those tools. You say, yeah, that's not how they talk. It's so obvious. So this AI-generated content from this left-leaning individual says, criticizing capitalism while using modern tools isn't hypocrisy. It's participation in a system while advocating to change aspects of it. That's how democratic societies function. That's horse hockey. You're chuckling about that. It is hypocrisy. You can't point to any of this stuff ever being created in a communist state. They can't do it.
They can't point to a successful communist state, let alone one that actually develops or innovates.
Oh, 100%.
There's not a historical example of a single communist state that didn't starve its citizenry.
And where people didn't die because they objected to the oppression. Incredible. This goes on to say, that's for education, labeling teachers, or you're going to love this one, labeling teachers or schools as dominated by left-wingers, because I did say that in my post, ignores the reality that educators are diverse in views. That's horse hockey. How many dang statistical polls have they done or reports of contributions and donations? And then like 93% go to Democrats from the educational community in this country? That's just statistical, mathematical fact. But of course,
but you can't expect a stupid liberal who has not had an original thought since they turned 18, that has spent their entire adult life regurgitating whatever the talking heads in mainstream media and the idiotic politicians they vote for tell them to think. You can't expect that person to exist in reality. They are so lost in la-la land with their head shoved so far up their own hind end that they forget what reality smells like.
That is so true. That's the key point, is ignoring reality. That's the key point. And they do. And so I wasn't surprised at this individual, and I allow them to stay connected to me. That's fine. I do it for giggles, honestly. But I read that, and look, nobody talks about this notion more than I do, that we got to frame these issues with facts. Whether it's coming from the right or left, I'm quick to point out when our friends on the right exaggerate and misguide and misrepresent truth. We point that out as well. I fully believe we're not going to solve problems and move our society forward unless we get the facts on the table. And let's have a robust debate about it. But this is an individual who's ignoring the fact that the schools are closed, that the kids are being used as pawns. Am I misrepresenting that?
No.
You've seen these reports today, right? They're all over the news. I didn't make this up. And this person says, can you cite some reports on that? Are you kidding me? Wake your butt up. But like you said, it's because it's in the rear. Golly, just open your eyes. How can you push back on that?
If they could actually open their eyes, they wouldn't be a worthless liberal anymore.
That's probably true.
Because opening their eyes would make them face the reality that they're just worthless. And they're trying to piggyback on a system built by a worthless waste of oxygen just so he wouldn't be feeling bad for being such a damn moocher.
I know. And so here's another person. Well, is the system we have really capitalism? I think it's more of crony capitalism, corporate socialism. In a capitalist system, prices should go down due to corporations and innovation. No, that's not how it works. You don't understand capitalism. Oh, my gosh. Do they not understand the simple equation of you sell it, I buy it, we agree on a price?
No.
They really don't.
Because what we talked about earlier, they've got that stupid labor theory of value.
That's exactly right. Well, in fact,
I spent 2 years building this tricycle. Why don't you want to give me $1 million for it? It took 2 years of my time.
oh my gosh, this individual says, May Day is International Workers' Day, honoring laborers in the working class. I thought we had a Labor Day. Don't we have a Labor Day? I thought that's what it was for.
It's too patriotic for them.
Oh, I see. Oh, gosh. It's you can honor work. That's what Labor Day's supposed to be. And if you want to make May Day that, okay, fine. That's not what's supposed to happen in my view. But that doesn't mean
May
that...
Day's Labor Day for losers. That's all it is.
Okay. That doesn't mean, as you just pointed out, I worked 2 years to assemble this bicycle, now a tricycle, I need $1 million. That's what they think. What they don't understand is that your value is determined by the market. And the market does not value hard work. It values value. Just don't get that. You can work your butt off. I could send you out there to dig ditches, fill them up, dig them again. Man, that's hard work. How much is that worth, though? And when government steps in or unions step in and they attempt to dictate what an hour of labor is worth, we all lose. I'm telling you. Now, I'm not ignoring the fact that 60, 70 years ago, there was
Longer than that.
It's more than that now, isn't it? We had exploitation, but it was part of the evolution. And that needed to be reined in. I agree. Is that still going on? Like, do we have working conditions problems? I'm serious.
I'm fairly certain if a worker falls into the meat grinder at the meat packing plant, they shut it down nowadays.
Yeah, and everybody's going to jail.
Labor unions were built because they weren't shutting it down. They were just going, all right, next.
That's exactly right. And like I said, if the company and its management is found to be grossly negligent, the term the lawyers used on me all the time, then they're freaking going to jail. Their laborers will own the company. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From the Seabrook.com web.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
This job and shoving, I ain't working here no more. My woman done left and took all of the reasons I was working for. You better not try to stand in my way when I walk out the door. Take this job and shove it. I ain't working here no more. I've been working in this factory pretty close to 15 years. I've seen some of my best.
Welcome back, everyone. That's a perfectly appropriate tune there, bumping into this segment on Middays. We're just talking about May Day, a day of protest by the leftists in this country.
That was from the all-hit request line from Mike and Fannin on the C-Spire text line.
I see it, Mike. I appreciate that.
In honor of the late, great David Allen Coe.
Absolutely. Yep. Sad to see the world lose a great artist to entertain so many. No doubt about it. Appreciate that, Mike. So on the C-Spire text line, Casey down in Ocean Springs says, I realized during COVID that the whole COVID money debacle was money laundering to the Democratic Party. School districts were using this money, and I should point out, Casey, a member of the Ocean Springs School District board there. The school districts were using this money to purchase online resources published by Democrats. Those Democrats were making gobs of money and donating to the Democrat Party. When I looked into it around 2018, I found that 98% of those in education contribute to the Democrat Party. Yeah, and so the fact that this person that engage with me in social media that try to refute that the education establishment is dominated by leftists. It's just mind-boggling. Like, you been living in a cave somewhere? Pretty much, huh? It's ground zero for socialism, communism in this country. Because, especially in higher ed, as you point out, and I don't want to generalize here, but it's because so many are just losers. Now, there are absolutely pockets of fantastic professors in the higher ed community, including here in Mississippi. There's no doubt about it. And there are administrators in university and community college presidents who are fantastic in the state of Mississippi. But when you get behind that layer and you get into some of the other more liberal-oriented schools on the campuses, that's where it all changes. Big time. And then in other parts of the country, it's outrageous. I caught a report yesterday. You remember us being shocked? I think you're the one that found it for us. When you and I, like every day, we'd be reporting on another university that would be establishing an office of DEI. And we were just stunned at the number of people those offices were employing and the pay. But one in particular that I think you pointed out for us was Ohio State. Had like 250 in their DEI department.
It was 200, but it was costing them $13 million for those 200 people.
Gosh. So I came across a video the other day on social media from a member of the administration there that said, yeah, we've rebranded everything, but it's still in place, right? Golly. So, and I'm looking at a little video here of these nutcases in Madison, Wisconsin that got their little signs and their little red shirts on. And they're all wearing, by the way, their badges, from their employment at their schools. And they're proud of the fact that they're out protesting today at the Capitol while the students are off. Now, they say they want the school board to address salary compression. Never heard that term before. Salary compression for veteran teachers. Okay. And sometimes I just want to say, well, you knew this was the deal. Why did you do this? Did you not think through that? Maybe it's because, in the case of these people, you're fearful of what it takes out in the world of capitalism to earn more money.
I mean, just look at the sob story the New York Times ran. What was it, last week, 2 weeks ago, about the people that were fired from USAID?
That's
and
right.
How they can't seem to find a job. They were making $200,000, and now they can't even get hired as a $19 an hour manager at the spice store.
That's exactly right.
It's because you have a null set of skill sets.
Yeah, that's totally right.
The taxpayers are basically paying to babysit you.
Oh, my gosh.
While you stole from them.
It's totally true. Well, I'm looking at this article in the Times. This is in the UK, and they've got an individual. I don't know if I pronounce his name correctly. Christian Sparasu. His father fled Yugoslavia, and his mother told a dark story of the Soviet Union, but apparently he didn't learn because he's sitting like on a sofa in his house, and flanking him on the right is a red pre-printed sign that says, child care, health care, tax the rich. And on the left, it's some sort of sign that says, Democrat for Mondani. For a New York you can afford. And atop his head, a red hat, MAGA for Mondani. Oh, my gosh. This is where they are, 25 years old. Says he's lost faith in the capitalist system. No, because they want it handed to them. That's the problem. So I submit there are more opportunities to get filthy rich in this country than ever in our history. I'm going to say again, we're on the cusp of seeing the first billion-dollar company, billion-dollar year of revenue company with one employee. That's where we're headed. That's where we're headed. No doubt about it. William in Greenville says, how much are Mississippi taxpayers paying for DEI in the state's universities? I'm not sure of the exact figure. You know, I am a proponent of a couple of things. One, tenure. I think we should eliminate tenure altogether. And I think we should ban. Remember, we stopped short of being able to do that with the legislation that went through the Capitol this year that got signed into law. Remember that, Rhino? And there's a stay on it, right? As I recall, legislation passed last year still is in that status from a legal perspective, which was pretty straightforward. It just basically said that you can't have quotas in enrollment. You can't give preferential treatment in the classroom and grading. Just common sense stuff that you wouldn't think you'd have to do. But there's some legal problems, apparently. There's a judge that's sitting on that. Let's see. What else we got here? Oh, man, I did a show with David Allen in the early 2000s at the Alabama Music Hall of Fame. Had a great show. That's Gary from Tishomingo. Yeah, fantastic artist. Art is a prime example of capitalism. I own several pieces from all over the world in the U.S., and the only way I buy it is if I agree to pay what they ask. It doesn't matter if it took 10 minutes or 2 weeks to pay. D from Tupelo said that. 100% absolutely true. That's just what's missing. Remember Joe Biden over and over on the campaign trail. It's time to reward work, not wealth. Because he's an idiot that doesn't understand and doesn't appreciate the fact that anyone who achieved wealth did have to do some sort of work. Now, how do you go about judging, well, what's hard work? And the point is the market will tell you. That's the whole point of this system. Sometimes those of you out there know from a business perspective, it doesn't matter what kind of job you've held in business. Either you're the owner, the entrepreneur, maybe you work in the business. And sometimes the stuff you work the hardest on just fails, produces nothing. And then all of a sudden you work a little bit, boom, jackpot. But it all kind of evens and balances out. You just keep grinding. You keep churning away. Do you know if any of those protests are in Mississippi today, says Ronnie from Ackerman. According to Google, I think there are. It's getting to be a crazy country. Totally. Rich in Biloxi, it's not about labor, about international socialism, warm and embracing socialism, not the bad kind. That's exactly right. Isn't that what Mondani said? The warmth of collectivism or some crap like that. Oh, my gosh. How can they say that crap with a straight face?
Because they're literally stupid.
And he is. There's no doubt about it. And, boy, he's got some problems they're dealing with up there. And it turns out that his utopia is a little more difficult to achieve than they once thought. Today it's Caleb Sailors at 11:20, and then at 12:05, Serena Flowers will be in the Element Wealth studio. She's an attorney and a partner. She's going to talk about the tariff refunds. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio. Stay with us.
The Huntington's disease.
Now back to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Apple did not disappoint yesterday, announced their earnings after the show. Top-line revenue of $111 billion. That exceeded analyst estimates. They made roughly $30 billion, so they're back in that $120 billion a year net profit run rate. I still believe NVIDIA will be the first company on the planet to generate $200 billion in annual net profit, and it could come next year based on their current trend. So a good swath of earnings reports for 5 of the Mag 7 this week. 4 of them announced on Wednesday. That was Amazon, Alphabet, Google, Meta, and Microsoft, and then yesterday, Apple. So we got 5 of them. The only 2 not reporting this week, Tesla and who's the other one? NVIDIA, right. Didn't report, but I think the outlook is quite good for them. The GDP report came in a couple of days ago, 2%, about in line. 2% annualized growth rate for the nation's economy, largely being driven, about half of it, by the massive capital investment in building out our data center and AI footprint. I was disappointed, Rhino, to see that HHS Secretary Robert Kennedy, he's now calling for an investigation into the health impact of data centers. And it's really kind of hard to figure out what's the pollution they're talking about, because when you dig into it, they're referring to the pollution ostensibly created by the power generating facilities to produce the power the data centers need. And then also electromagnetic problems. What are they talking about? From data centers? Hasn't that been sort of debunked? Remember all the hype about, oh my gosh, the cell towers, we're all going to have brain cancer from using phones, and then the RF produce. How's that worked out? Any reports on that? Right. Bunch of bunk is what that was. So I'm a little disappointed here. And then, of course, the constraint of resources. And I am pleased to see that even the local paper here, the Clarion Ledger, reported that, hey, it looks like something we talked about numerous times, the AWS facilities in Madison, it turns out they're using wastewater. We told you that a year ago, you idiots. Did we not? I've told people, hell, I signed off on the infrastructure that carries the wastewater from the wastewater treatment plant to the Amazon campus. It's unbelievable. And we're quickly headed to a point where they won't be using any water whatsoever, wastewater or otherwise. Yes, there's some evaporation using wastewater, but it ignores the fact that the Nissan plant up there in Canton uses more water, has for years, than the Amazon facility will. Nobody said a word about that. We use more flush in our toilets than they do. It's almost like people get money, they get a cause, it gives them purpose, makes them feel good about themselves. Look at me, I'm out here protesting. They don't even know what the heck they're protesting. Well, this is a great example of, going back to what I said earlier, we got to frame it with the facts. Do we need to be responsible? Sure. Do we need to make sure we're not burdening our resource supply to ensure that people aren't negatively affected? Absolutely. It doesn't matter if it's a data center or a retail store. Either way, we need to be responsible stewards of the environment and the community. Can't we do that while simultaneously meeting our needs for this? Isn't that kind of how we built the country? Haven't we always responded? I know I've talked about this before. When I was a kid back in the 60s, and the whole pollution thing was a problem because it was largely unguarded. But you know what? We also didn't possess the tools, the technology. And I know a lot of times when you hear technology, you think computers. That's not really what technology is. That's just innovation, human innovation to solve human problems. But we didn't have the stuff we have today. The cars that we have today, their emissions have been reduced to virtually none. You don't have a bunch of factories spewing out particulate out of smokestacks anymore. We figured out a way to do that. And the point is, we're pretty smart. God gave us brains. Thank you, God. And we're pretty good at solving our problems.
Yeah, when's the last time you heard about acid rain?
Yeah, exactly. Man, I remember that was going to shut the whole plant. We were all going to die. When's the last time in Los Angeles where I remember regularly they'd shut the whole dang school system down? Don't go to school today. The smog's too bad. When's the last time that happened? You mean we figured it out, solved that problem? Wow. We're coming right back after Fox News and SuperTalk News. Stay with us. Of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
Welcome to the show that challenges you to think deeply, and look beyond political posturing. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays from the Element Wealth Studio on this
Friday, y'all.
The market's looking pretty good today. That is after a really good month of April for the Dow, for all the indexes, honestly. And I think I don't remember calling this many records, but the NASDAQ eclipsed the 25,000 mark. If I'm not mistaken, Rhino, that's the first time in history that the NASDAQ has come in over 25,000, right? And the Dow's sitting at 49,670. Of course, it hit 50,000 earlier in the year, but the gain, the rally, is being extended. I'm a little pleasantly surprised that investors are kind of shrugging off the geopolitical situation, the price of oil and energy. It sort of defies logic, but I think they're taking their cue from the president, who indicates that this thing is going to come to an end pretty soon, and he once again emphasized that the strategy is really having a negative impact on the nation of Iran economically. And you know who else it's affecting? China, our most ardent foe, arguably. This disruption of the flow of oil in particular is causing problems for China. So the investors are kind of trying to consume all these inputs. They're juggling them. You got upbeat earnings, great outlook, but you got the oil shock that's sitting on us as well. And a lot of the Dow stocks, particularly in high tech, are doing quite well. And that's because they all had blowout, or 5. We talked about that earlier. 5 of the 7 just reported this week had blowout quarters. Apple, man, rumors of their demise a bit unfounded, shall we say. They just really shocked the world. It's amazing to me looking at all these companies, talking about the Mag 7, all 400, $500 billion companies now. Amazon might be the first company to produce $1 trillion of top-line revenue. Their run rate right now is about $700 billion. That's just hard to understand, hard to wrap your head around that they could produce that much. And, of course, their big cash cow is their Amazon Web Services, their cloud services business unit. The state of Mississippi, as you know, playing a huge part in that growth with the massive investment the big hyperscaler is making in our state right now in Madison and Hinds counties. But I think you're going to see them dump even more money into our state, finding it a pretty dang good place to do business. And that's a good thing. Meanwhile, the president signed an executive order yesterday expanding retirement account access for workers. So there are a bunch of people, it's estimated to be right at 56 million people. And before I get on this, I forgot to mention Caterpillar. Caterpillar drove the big gain on the Dow yesterday. They came in. That's selling off a bit today because they had such a remarkable run yesterday. So, Rhino, this is some second-order thinking, is it not? Because guess what's fueling Caterpillar's growth? Artificial intelligence. Because they're selling a bunch of the machines they make to the people who build the AI factories. Really? So amazing how that works. So this is a more traditional old guard industry. They make construction equipment, and they're benefiting. Wow. Don't tell that to the anti-AI people, right? They don't want to hear that. 56 million Americans lack access to an employer-sponsored retirement plan at work. That's according to research from Pew Charitable Trusts. They're an independent public policy organization. So the president yesterday, he signed an executive order that will create a new way for these people to save for retirement. So those of you that work for an employer that offers these programs, 401k plans, which I'm trying to think of when those were created, Rhino, back in the early 80s maybe? Early to mid-80s is when the whole 401k idea came into being, and it became a common benefit for most employers.
Yeah, it was the Revenue Act of 1978.
Okay. I knew it was somewhere around that time frame. It was kind of new on the scene, and it didn't get widespread adoption initially. There was some tuning and tweaking to it, and then finally it did. And
yeah, they finally got IRS clarification by 81.
Okay. That makes sense. And I remember that when all that was happening. But so there's a new website. It's going to be up and running next year, TrumpIRA.gov. So this will allow workers to research and contrast the various plans, and they'll be able to enroll in traditional private sector IRA accounts. And I'm not totally crazy about this idea. If you could receive some financial assistance up to $1,000 from the federal government if you contribute at least $2,000 into your account. These are kind of modeled after the thrift savings plan that federal employees have. And this is actually part of the Federal Savers Match Program. Actually, this got legs under the Biden administration, extending that match of up to $1,000 per year from the federal government. So I get when you're doing that to federal employees. I'm kind of iffy on the idea of the federal government throwing $1,000 into individuals' accounts. It's sort of modeled after the Obamacare exchanges. Now, these are limited in scope of investment. You pick kind of the one that, or you could have multiple, that matches your investment preferences. But I think this is a good thing that now these folks that currently don't have access to these sorts of retirement programs in their work now will. So it's similar to those who maybe work for a small employer that doesn't offer health insurance. They're not required to by federal law. 50 and up employees, yes, those employers are. And that actually was the catalyst, the idea behind creation of the Affordable Care Act exchanges. It's for those who purchase their insurance in the individual market as opposed to the group market, meaning you purchase coverage from through your employer. and what's called a group plan. This is similar. If your employer doesn't have a 401k plan, they don't offer that, you'll have the ability to invest in one by going to this website that'll be up and running next year, TrumpIRA.gov. And when you sign up, again, you're eligible for a match of up to $1,000 from the federal government directly into their accounts. Now, by the way, I should point out there's an income threshold on that. I think it's $35,000, if I'm not mistaken, that for which one can be eligible to receive the matching money from the government. So if you're a higher income individual, you can still open an account, but you're not eligible for the match. The match only applies to those with low incomes. So I think what they're trying to do is go beyond what I heard yesterday out of the administration, beyond the EO phase here, and maybe get Congress to extend that threshold through law and codify this. Because right now it's just an EO. And all that means is that, well, another president could come in the future and just repeal the whole thing. But that's, this is a business person that thinks like a business person and is taking business action here. So the other thing to keep in mind with respect to capitalism, a subject we've been talking about, that means 56 million people now will be able to invest. They probably don't invest in individual stocks and bonds and other financial assets. But through this plan, they're actually going to be investing in exchange-traded funds and index funds and stuff like that. The point there is that's more money, more capital flowing into the markets. And that means that stock prices will go up. And everybody benefits because more are participating. It's the greatest wealth-generating machine in the history of God's green earth is the United States stock market. And that cannot be denied. Caleb Sailors, he's coming in the studio next.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Oh, the great David Bowie.
Fame.
Ziggy Stardust there, Rhino. It's our pleasure to welcome now Caleb Sailors, multimedia journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News.
Little fun factoid about that song, Gerard. So I'll produce our scoreboard show on Friday nights during the football season, and Keith, our in-house expert on everything high school football in Mississippi, he'll do a trivia segment toward the end of the show, and we play that song in the background. He said, play David Bowie, Fame, and he's like, make sure you get it right, get the sequence right, so he'll go through his trivia. We have a pretty good time. Man, I'm missing football now, Gerard.
Yeah, no. It'll be here for you, You know how that works.
That's right.
All right, what's going on today?
Yeah, so one thing I want to give our listeners, maybe some of you have tickets to the Chicago concert at the Brandon Amphitheater. It's not happening tonight, but it's still happening. It will take place Sunday instead of tonight. There's inclement weather expected in the Brandon and the Metro Jackson area. 100% chance of rain is what the National Weather Service is forecasting. And so Brandon Amphitheater's like, let's put this on pause, but we'll be back Sunday. So if you're in the area and you still have tickets, those tickets will be redeemable on Sunday, so you can hear 25 or 6 to 4. You're the inspiration. Saturday in the Park, whatever Chicago song you like, you'll be able to hear it. On the news side of things, though, Gerard, it looks like we've got a special session coming up in Mississippi, and I know you've talked about this on your show throughout the week, so I won't get too exhaustive with it, but it's in response. I know the governor last Friday had a 4 o'clock announcement that he was going to get the legislature to reconvene 21 days after the Supreme Court ruled on the Calais decision, Calais versus the state of Louisiana, which was a case that challenged, there's 6 congressional districts in Louisiana. They drew a map and it was 5-1 Republican to Democrats, and then it got challenged and said, no, you got to have more majority black districts. You can't just have one. And so they drew a 4-2 map, and then that map got challenged. And so what the Supreme Court ruled is that second majority black district required too much on race. It relied too heavily on race, and that they have to redraw it. And so now Mississippi, here's how it relates to Mississippi. Our Supreme Court voting map has been challenged, and by a federal judge has told the legislature, you need to redraw these lines. You're diluting black voting power. And so the state legislature was given until the end of the regular session to draw those lines, but the holdup there was, we got to see what the Supreme Court's going to do, because that could set a precedent for what we're going to do. So we'll see. May 20th is when that date lies, when the governor has ordered the special session. So we'll see if Mississippi is just going to look at the Supreme Court lines, or if the state wants to take a look at the congressional map. I know a lot of states have floated out the idea of getting rid of some of these, especially in the South, some of these minority districts that have seemingly put Democrats in power. I know the state of Virginia went the other way with it, taking Republican districts away. And if Florida has floated, getting rid of some of their Democratic districts too. So theoretically, Mississippi could do it. The governor hasn't really said whether or not he will. So we'll kind of have to wait and see there.
Yeah, not sure. I haven't heard too much. I've talked to some legislators, and they don't really know that anything's going to happen there or not. That would be up to the governor to set that agenda. Right,
and that's one of the powers that the governor has in Mississippi is, the governor position in Mississippi, it's not as powerful as many would think. What the governor's been doing lately is steering a lot of economic development opportunities in Mississippi, but not really, other than vetoing. His legislative power isn't really tremendous, and even his vetoes can be overridden,
yeah.
But one big power he does have is he sets the entire agenda for a special session. So they could even bring up other items. I mean, if he wants to bring, let's just a school choice, whatever, I don't think he will. But if he wants to bring those back up for discussion, a PBM reform discussion, he very well could do that too. But he did specifically reference the Supreme Court voting map on Friday last week during his announcement. So
that's right.
That's the parameters right now. But if he wants to talk about chocolate ice cream, they would have to discuss that in the special session. So that is one of the powers the governor has.
Yeah, no doubt about that. So big weekend at Ole Miss and Mississippi State with Super Bulldog weekend in Starkville and Double Decker in Oxford. How'd that go?
So we'll go with the good first, then we'll go to the bad. The good is that Oxford had over 228,000 people total in the city.
Wow.
Around 112,000 of those were for Double Decker, the Double Decker Arts Festival. For those who are unfamiliar with it, it's a big art display. A lot of vendors selling their products and crafts, and then there's music to go along with it. And they had a pretty stacked lineup. And then there's all these food vendors. It's amazing. It was a really good time. I actually got to go out on Saturday for a little bit before the baseball games. Ole Miss had a doubleheader on Saturday, and that's also what drew a large portion of the crowd, too. A lot of people were there to watch the Rebels, and Swayze was pretty packed, Gerard, for both of the games of the doubleheader, though the cap to it went 14 innings. So by inning 14, I was still there. By inning 14, though, most of the crowd had dissipated and said, all right, we're going to listen to the rest of this on the radio. We'll listen to David Kellum, or we'll go home and watch the rest of this on TV. And then Oxford High School had a playoff baseball game. M-Trade Park, the local immaculate youth sporting complex, had over 110 teams competing there. So City of Oxford was packed this weekend, a town of under 30,000 people with, 8 times its population visiting.
Man.
The bad news, Starkville had a really, really good day with the Starkville Derby, the world's largest weenie dog race. Mississippi State got a sweep of LSU this weekend.
Yep.
Super Bulldog weekend.
First time in a long time, right?
They swept the weekend before. They swept South Carolina.
LSU.
Oh, yeah, yes. Yeah. That sweeping LSU is not something that happens often. LSU is down this year, but still. Right, it was a good weekend until nighttime. There was a shooting that sent someone to the hospital. The individual had to be airlifted. And so now there was a lot of outcry on social media. People were very disturbed by that and some other things that were happening in the Cotton District area, which is kind of the bar nightlife scene in Starkville. And so in response to this, 4 arrests have been made. 4 people, all Starkville natives, have been charged with attempted murder in connection with this shooting. And now the city of Starkville is implementing new security measures. There's going to be 4 main entry points in the Cotton District. You're going to have to get a wristband to determine you've gone through security to get in. You got to be 18 or older. This is going to be on Fridays and Saturdays from 10 p.m. until 1 a.m. Again, 18 or older, no face coverings. You can't bring backpacks or outside food and beverages in. There's going to be a bigger surge of law enforcement, too. And it seems like Mayor Lynn Spurl's nipping that in the bud. She's not going to tolerate shooting or
Sure.
violence. And, it's
Good
a
for her.
college town in Mississippi, and a lot of young people are going out and wanting to enjoy their college experience and enjoy themselves. And again, on a weekend like Super Bulldog weekend, where there's tens and tens of thousands of people in Starkville, you just can't tolerate violent crime at all. And so she said, yeah, we're not doing this. And the Starkville Police Department has issued, a release kind of identifying the parameters of the entry points and everything, the security checkpoints that are going to be in place in the Cotton District starting tonight. And we have more details at supertalk.fm too, so if people want to know, if you're in the Starkville area and you do want to go out, or you might be hesitant to go out because of what happened last weekend, you can read more, and we kind of give you a rundown of what they're doing.
The long-awaited farm bill has passed the U.S. House.
It has, in 224 to 200 votes. 3 of our 4 Mississippi congressmen voted in favor of it. Trent Kelly, Mike Ezell, and Congressman Michael Guest voted for it. Congressman Benny Thompson voted against it. But this is a $390 billion package, Gerard, that's meant to give much-needed relief to farmers. The ongoing war in Iran, gas prices, everything going up, commodity prices kind of struggling right now, row crop industry struggling. Farmers need relief. And so this is a really big step forward to getting farmers relief. Now, of course, this has to clear the Senate, and I'm not sure where that'll go. Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, though, seemed optimistic that they can get it to conference and work something out there. But I know our Mississippi Farm Bureau President Mike McCormick has lauded this legislation as a huge win for farmers, and they're really eager to get this across the finish line.
Did Congressman Thompson offer an explanation of his no vote?
I did not see Congressman Benny Thompson's explanation, if any exists. I'm not sure there. I know that there was very little. You see the vote, 224 to 200. So there were some Democrats that voted for it, but very, very little Democratic support. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he kind of just went with the majority of the party. You see that on both sides happening. I don't know. I know that there was some Democratic concern that some of the elements of the Farm Bill aren't really for farmers, that some of the quote unquote Trump agenda being implemented there. That's been one holdup in getting a Farm Bill across the finish line lately. Usually it'd be every 5 years they'd re-examine it and they'd pass it with bipartisan support, but we're so politically polarized now that it's kind of hard to get a lot of things that are good and useful passed.
That's very true. Caleb Sailors, multimedia journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News, has been our guest. Appreciate that, Caleb. Thanks for coming on. Yep. We are going to step aside for a break right now. We're in the Element Wealth studio. At the top of the hour, it's Serena Flowers. She is going to help us understand this whole tariff refund situation. Stay with us.
From the sea, Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's do this.
On Super Talk, Mississippi.
Let's go.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays from the Element Wealth studio. Thank you for joining us today on the C Spire text line. Blake in the Delta said even Elon is pushing people towards socialism by suggesting that there will be universal basic income sooner than later to combat all the jobs the economy is set to lose due to AI. Actually, for him, it's more about the jobs that will be replaced by robots and robotics, using, of course, AI. And that's something that his company is heavily involved in. He's kind of betting the future of the company on autonomous vehicles, space travel, and robots. Actually, what he advocates for is universal high income. He says that this is going to be necessary to provide a high quality of life. Says AI and robots will create a discontinuity, his word, in the labor market, making traditional jobs obsolete. Yeah, I don't know if I'd call that socialism. I guess you could say to some extent that certainly leans into it. This is just what he believes is necessary. Of course, he didn't say it needs to come from the government, by the way. He also did say that these technologies will produce goods and services far in excess of the increased money supply, preventing inflation. So, in other words, the injection of the money by paying people through this universal high income program will not be inflationary because of the productivity achieved by the technology itself. He says that in the future, he sees everyone having access to top medical care, food, housing, and transportation. How about that? On the C Spire text line, we were just talking about the indoctrination of children in the educational environment towards the idea of an economy grounded in socialism. This person says, this is where I wish kids had phones in class so they could record this rhetoric these teachers are spewing. I guarantee you that they teach this. I believe it as well. Karen in Oxford says, if only the teachers weren't also the would-be presidential assassins at this point. Good point, Karen. Teachers of the month at that. Laugh out loud. Yep, just saw that, didn't we? Labor Day must be for those hateful MAGA folks, says Charles in Matheson. Rich in Biloxi says, it's not about labor, it's about international socialism, warm and embracing socialism, not the bad kind. I agree with you, Rich. They're trying to veil it with, we're trying to look out for the working conditions and for the laborers. And again, if there's anything going on in Mississippi around these protests, let us know. Absolutely.
Oh, I'm sure you'll have the same dozen or so losers that line up and shout their phrases and parade their picket signs around the state capitol.
Yeah, that's absolutely
always
true.
The same people with nothing better to do.
Dan in Hattiesburg makes a good point. How can you lose faith in capitalism when you're only 25? Yeah, it's a good point, Dan. No doubt about it. So Williams says he thinks DEI is in play at Delta State University, says it's about to destroy Delta State. Interesting. Let me know if you know any other details there, William. I'm sure they're having them in Oxford. Seems like every 2 or 3 weeks of protesters by the federal buildings on the square. I've seen that as well. That's Chris from Oxford. I have as well, Chris. Yeah, on the C Spire text line, you're right on education freedom. It's tough to reconcile me wanting teachers to be able to freely talk about God in the workplace, but also restrict ideas that I do not want being talked about with my child. The current situation isn't right. You can't have sharing of communist and LGBTQ ideas in schools, but restrict Christianity. But restricting all ideas probably isn't the answer either. It's a tough topic. Well, I agree, but in the K-12 environment, do we even have to get into all that sort of stuff? I mean, I don't remember talking about that when I was in school. It was just trying to learn a little bit about math and science and how to read, write, little history.
Well, it's because in your day and age, freakazoids were shamed for being freakazoids.
That's true.
Considered champions.
That's absolutely true. And I don't remember all the teachers being left-wing nutcases back then either. Oh, yeah, Ray in Long Beach says, don't forget the hole in the ozone layer in the 80s. Yeah, we were talking about. I'm just disappointed to see our Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert Kennedy, sounding the alarm, if you will, on data centers. He's kind of joining in the growing calls from people who I just think don't have anything else better to do but to use data centers to protest data centers. And I was disappointed to see him come forth. I'm not exactly sure what in the heck he's talking about. I don't see it. I really don't. You know, something else that's going on. I caught this article, believe it or not, in Time. Little good news here. There's a company, again, using technology that is working on de-extinction, right? So it already brought back the dire wolf. Now they're working on the antelope. That's their next target. De-extinction. Incredible. So is this not just a great pointed, strong example of how the brains God gave us are put to use to produce goodness in society, to solve a societal problem? Now, some may say this isn't a problem. I don't know. Preventing an animal from going extinct, especially if that extinction was caused by humans.
I was about to say, it depends on what theory you buy into as to how certain animals went extinct.
If it's part of
if it's the dire wolf or the mammoth or the woolly rhino or stuff like that, where most people are under the assumption, I'll call it that they were overhunted, that it was mankind that caused their extinction, then if mankind can bring them back from extinction, then that's remedying a problem from the past.
Totally true.
What you get into is, what if it wasn't overhunting? What if it was the climate changed and that particular species was no longer conducive to the current climate?
Agree. But if it happens naturally, organically, I'd say that's part of nature's plan, nature created by God, those of us who believe. It just goes that way. But when man errs is actually the proper term, well then I think it's fine to correct that. And that's
like, we know for a fact mankind caused the extinction of the dodo bird.
That's right.
We don't know for a fact that mankind caused the extinction of the mammoths, because when you look at the number of mammoths that are estimated to have been alive and the number of humans that were estimated to be alive, there literally weren't enough humans.
Totally right. So on the C Spire text line, Arlen and Wayne County, this is in reference to my sharing a moment ago in the last segment that Caterpillar also had a huge day yesterday. And again, their growth, top and bottom line, benefiting from the data center construction explosion occurring in our country. Part of the picks and shovels play, as the investor folks like to say. Arlen says, Caterpillar builds machines that can be programmed to do a job autonomously. Imagine an excavator digging an 8-foot deep trench, 4 feet wide, 100 feet long, using GPS without an operator. 100%, Arlen. Appreciate you pointing that out. Guess what they're using for that, Rhino? Data centers. Oh, man. There's just so many easy cases to make, are there not? So do we benefit from that? Is that productivity? Does that create wealth? Yeah, 100% it does. Now, something I'm not a big fan of, the president, the Trump administration, gave a final bailout proposal. This is just breaking for Spirit Airlines. They basically told the world yesterday, we're out of here. No bailout. We can't survive it. We got about 2 weeks of cash on hand, and we're not going to make it. And so the president says that, of course, one of the problems is you got a lot of people who have the company's bonds holding their debt. The company can't pay them back, and they're at the bottom of the stack when it comes to a liquidation event. So that would be a problem. So the president has tendered a final bailout proposal. I don't know what's going to happen. Literally, this news just broke 10 minutes ago. Didn't Meta just agree to invest $20 million in Mississippi, or was it $20 billion? Yeah, I don't think it was $20 million. I want to say it was 10, but it doesn't matter. So just so you'll know, what Meta is investing in is IT infrastructure that they are going to install and co-locate over with Compass in Meridian. The Compass data center over there is a co-location facility. That means that the infrastructure installed in its environment, in its facility, on its floor, is owned by third parties. They just want their hardened facility. What do you see there, Rhino?
Yeah, Quarterhill, a Meta affiliate, has agreed to a minimum of investment of $20 million.
Okay, $20 million is the number.
That's the Compass Data Center campus in Meridian.
Coming right back.
Polyumpa, Mississippi.
Are we going to do this?
Middays with Gerard Gibert
Keep rolling. 3, 2, 1.
on SuperTalk Mississippi.
And during the few moments that we have left, we want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Okay, this just hot off the press. A jury has convicted Florida ex-congressman of secretly lobbying for Venezuela. A $50 million deal. This is a Republican, ex-member of Congress from the great state of Florida, David Rivera. So that, remember, back in those days, the mostly a socialist country, it's sort of akin to what we've been talking about today. They owned the oil company in Venezuela. He was lobbying for them while in Congress. Accepted $50 million in payment from the company to influence members of Congress and the White House while he represented the district he did in Florida. That's just mind-boggling. This is what people hate about politics. This is why they have such a low opinion and why they don't trust them. Right there. Because every day they give them a reason not to and to have a low opinion. Why would increased investment dollars drive up stock prices? Or did I mishear what you said? Tom in Lumberton. Well, Tom, so it's a demand and supply thing. So when there's more money, more capital, more vehicles to invest capital, one's money, such as through these new Trump IRA accounts, into stocks, money flowing into stocks drives the price up. It's just a demand and supply thing. If more people want it, they raise the price. Simple as that. Now, people that are investing consider a myriad of factors as to whether or not they can stomach that, and they think that's a fair price for the stock. That's what wealth managers do every day, all day. But just in general, that's the way it works, Tom, is that it's a demand and supply thing. More money going in drives the price up.
Look at it this way. It's confidence in the company.
Yeah.
If company XYZ has enough money on hand to make a $10 million investment and it's not going to break them, then you have confidence they had $10 million to spend.
Yep.
So if you're more confident that a company's running well, then you're more confident putting money, investments in that company.
That's right. But the point here with this executive order is that now 50 million people have a way to invest that are probably on the sidelines not investing. That's the point. So it's not that they don't have the money to, they just don't have the means. Yeah, they could open up a Schwab account or something. I'm just using them as an example. And one thing that's changed because of technology, Rhino, and because of wealth. We don't have to pay. I remember when you had to pay to buy stock and sell stock. You had to pay commissions. You do it yourself now. That's a job that's been eliminated. So stockbrokers evolved into wealth managers. And they're making more money than they ever have. You know why? Because there's more wealth, despite what the left says. We don't need wealth managers if we didn't have wealth. Now, speaking of which, we're trying to get Ro Khanna. You remember him? He was on after I happened to run into him in a restaurant at the inauguration. And Ro Khanna, he's representative from Silicon Valley area. He's calling for a $30 federal minimum wage. $30 minimum wage. And he's made a little TikTok video where he makes his case for that. And he goes through this explanation of, just like all the leftists do, well, the more affluent society, their income's gone up this much, but these people, there hasn't. Which is, so what are you trying to do? Take it away from these, give it to those? Exactly, right? And you're in the middle of that? We're trying to get him on to talk about his push for an increase. And by the way, he says in his little video, well, as an ex-professor of economics at Stanford, oh, yeah, whoo, that makes you smarter than all the rest of us, right? Oh, gosh. So, yeah, Tom, it's a good thing because now all these people will have a vehicle to first save for retirement. That's enjoy the benefits of the United States stock market. And they have a vehicle to do that. And the companies benefit because it's more capital flowing in. And everybody that's invested in the market benefits because more capital flowing in means the prices go up. So it's a win-win-win-win-win across the board. It's a good thing. I'm just a little iffy on the government also adding to their 401k accounts. And here's my main objection. We're freaking broke. We're running $2 trillion deficits. We just talked about a couple of days ago that now our debt is 100% of our GDP. It's headed to 120% of our GDP in the next 5 years. We need to be cognizant of that. I'm tired of borrowing money to give away. I don't think that makes any sense. Fox News SuperTalk News is coming up next. Then it's Serena Flowers. She's going to talk about this new tariff refund program.
Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 3, the afternoon portion of Middays. We're coming at you from the Element Wealth Studio on this
Friday, y'all.
It's our pleasure to welcome now Serena Flowers. She's going to talk to us about this major announcement from the Trump administration. She's an attorney and a partner, consultants at Jackson, LLC, president of Avant-garde Strategies, LLC. And this is in reference, Serena, to the Supreme Court ruling on the tariff situation, and it looks like that maybe some folks could be eligible for some refunds that they previously paid to the administration based on President Trump's policies.
That's correct, Gerard. First of all, thank you for having me on this morning, and I'm digging the shirt. I told you before we went on the air that
got my Journey shirt on.
He's got his Journey shirt on, and I was using that as my pump-up music this morning, getting dressed.
Oh, love it.
I know you're a huge Journey fan.
Absolutely.
And again, appreciate the opportunity to come on today.
Yeah.
This could really be significant for Mississippi businesses. There is approximately $166 billion available in refunds. And again, we would like to get the word out and let Mississippi businesses know about this program.
So we're hearing about this now. The ruling came down, a couple of months or so ago, I guess, and there have been kind of sketchy details on this whole refund aspect of this.
Correct. The ruling came down in February of 2026, and that case was Learning Resources, Inc. versus Trump. And the gist of the case was that the government didn't have the authority to, across the board, apply these additional tariffs.
Okay.
There's, in addition to the $166 billion that's available for refunds, there's an additional $10 billion in statutory interest that's at issue here that could be on the table for businesses to collect as well.
Okay, so what's the time period that this ruling applies to in terms of the tariff refund opportunity?
So the tariff refund opportunity applies to February of 2025 through February of 2026 to tariffs that were paid during that period, specifically February 4th of 2025 through February 24th of February 2026, and the tariffs that were paid during that time frame.
And so is it thought that businesses, I guess, that would be eligible for this, are these the ones that actually remitted tariffs payments to the government?
That is one aspect of it. Okay. There's 3 prongs of opportunity here. Number one are the importers of record. And I consider those like the raw good importers. Those are the companies that paid the tariffs directly to the Customs and Border Patrol entity, and they are the direct payors. And so that is one prong of recovery. The second prong is downstream buyers. Think of this as consumer goods, electronics, furniture, fashion, all of those areas, the in-good product. And then even on top of that, you've got the carriers, FedEx, UPS, DHL. Because if we all know how the trickle-down effect works. Oh, yeah. And so the tariffs that the importers of records paid directly to CFB were then passed on to the consumer, wholesalers, distributors, and ultimately the consumer themselves. So there's 3 different ways to recover the tariffs.
Okay. So how does one go about applying for these tariffs? Is there a federal government prescribed process for this?
There is a process. The window opened on April the 20th. There's a portal that it's a pretty hairy filing application, which is why we are offering our services.
Okay.
But the portal did open on April 20th, so now people are beginning to take a look at this and determine whether or not the tariffs that they paid are in fact eligible to be refunded, and the interest applied to that as well.
Okay. And how does the government calculate interest in this case?
It's set by statute.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's set by statute.
So I think there's always a concern, Serena, when you have programs like this, that there's the door is open for scamming. Like, I go apply, the government sends me money, didn't do a really good job of vetting and approving those applications. It turns out you really weren't entitled to it. Have they put some safeguards in, hopefully, to make sure that only those who are legitimately eligible would receive money back from the government?
Well, there are direct regulations and guidelines for the program. But again, that is, why we would like to offer our services to the public, is because we've got a deep bench. We've got trade attorneys, we've got tax attorneys, we've got former customs employees, and then we also have CPAs on our team. So it's a white glove service that we're offering here, start to finish, including if you have to go to court to defend, the application down the road.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point, because they may send the payment after review the application and all the submissions, but then come back later and say, yeah, we messed up, you're not entitled to that much, and then you got to have somebody. It's kind of like doing your tax return.
That's correct. Or they may try to apply your refund to current tariffs that you owe.
I got you.
And so that's a way that we can intercede and make sure that those two say separate items.
That makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I think the point is, you're taking a risk if you attempt to do this on your own without professional assistance.
That is correct, yes. And, we're talking about this at a very high level today.
Sure.
This is just to let people know that the program is now active and available for them to go learn about. We encourage them to study up on it themselves first, and then to reach out to a certified professional to assist in the filing of the application.
So, Serena, is this a done deal in terms of the government authorizing these refunds, or is there some risk that you could go through this and then they pull back and say, well, yeah, really, we're going to keep the money?
No, I would say at this point it's a done deal.
Okay.
With the government opening the portal itself on April 20th, that signifies that they've made the determination that these funds are due to Mississippi businesses. Well, not just Mississippi businesses, obviously, businesses across the board.
Because that was in question at first, right? After the Supreme Court rule, it wasn't really clear if we were going to proceed with actually refunding.
That is correct. But then they made the determination that was the equitable solution to it. Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So essentially they're saying you've been harmed by this policy because it was illegal.
That's exactly what, and the Supreme Court is made up of, the justices that are appointed by a number of different presidents. We've got sitting justices now that have been appointed by different presidents.
Sure.
And so this is not a political thing.
Sure.
I mean, this is just a business decision and a straight determination that, in fact, the law was violated, that they didn't have the power to levy those tariffs, and that they are due back to the businesses that paid them.
Okay. So a lot of people, of course, are saying, as consumers, a lot of those tariffs were passed on to them. They really don't get to participate in this. Has there been any further discussion of that? And are any companies maybe thinking about perhaps sharing some of that with their customers? Have you heard anything
that's
like
a business decision within the business itself. And as a business owner, I'd have to look at that hard myself. Yeah. But I do think that there is a broad range of folks here that were affected. And so I think that, again, I just encourage folks to take a look at this and reach out to a certified professional that knows the programs, the ins and the outs from start to finish, and that can help them with their application to seek the money that they are due.
Okay. All right. So if folks want to give you guys a shout and work with you on this request, how do they do that?
The best thing to do at this point right now is to go to our website or to email me directly, and that's Serena at consultantsjxn.com. That's SERENA at consultantsjxn.com. And we would be happy to discuss the program in more detail with them and to evaluate whether or not we think that they should move forward with an application.
And they can also learn more about this at www.consultantsjxn.com, right?
That is correct.
Yeah. All right. Well, interesting. So are you seeing the movements in other parts of the country as well to reach out to people and tell them they're here to help them with this?
Yes, and I would encourage our Mississippi folks to. We are affiliated with a national firm that is out of Arizona. That this is their specific area of expertise.
Interesting.
But it's Mississippi lawyers here working with Mississippi businesses to make sure that they get the tariff refund that they are due.
Okay. Is there anything specific or unique within the states that might affect this, or is this because it's a federal program, it's pretty much across the whole country?
Yeah, because it's a federal program, it's going to be standard across the board.
Okay.
And I would just, suggest, too, that people evaluate their own business and don't think that, maybe you're too small or that your goods don't qualify, because there's a huge, broad range of consumer goods that this affects.
Yeah.
I mean, it's automotive, it's technology, it's food, beverage, agricultural, fashion, in-product use kind of furniture. Just think across the board.
And $166 billion, right?
Yes.
Is what's available to be
That
refunded.
is what, and let me point out too, it's on a first come, first served basis.
Oh, okay.
So time is of the essence here to go ahead and meet with that professional and determine whether or not you are eligible and get your application moving.
Good point. Serena Flowers, attorney and partner, consultants at Jackson LLC. Appreciate you coming on, Serena. Explain that. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks, Gerard. Have a great Friday.
You guys too. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
At Carter Jewelers.
Attention, adoring fans! It's time for
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. We are in the Element Wealth studio. Are you thinking about or planning for a retirement? Do you have a plan? Go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-879-4395. That's the C-Spire text line. 601-957-6006. That's how you get in touch with Element Wealth. They'll help you find your balance between income growth and guarantees. The NASDAQ up 285. The Dow, well, now the bears have taken over. It is trending downward 23 points, but it had a huge day yesterday. So a little profit taking, I believe, is what's going on. But traders are pretty impressed with the earnings reports from the 5 of the Mag 7, the tech-dominated NASDAQ, comfortably in the green, putting up a rally right now, 290 points past the 25,000 mark for the first time in history. The greatest wealth-generating machine in the history of the world is the American stock market. And with the president's executive order yesterday, some 40 to 50 million people will now have access to this wealth-generating machine through the Trump IRA accounts. That portal is to be up by January of next year. Good deal. SuperTalk Mississippi, we're hitting the road, of course. Join us live next Thursday from the Pearl River Resort in Philadelphia from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. It's a full day of coverage as we highlight the incredible partnership between the Mississippi Farm Bureau and the Mississippi Food Network through their Farmers Feeding the Hungry initiative. Middays with me and Sports Talk Mississippi will be broadcasting from the heart of Philadelphia Thursday, May 7th. Keep listening to Super Talk Mississippi for a day of inspiration, information, and celebration with the home team at Mississippi Farm Bureau. So I misspoke earlier that Ro Khanna had legislation, Representative Ro Khanna out of California, legislation to increase the federal minimum wage from $7.25 to $30. He only wants it to go to $25 minimum wage. So think about that, folks. Minimum wage, $50,000 a year. All right, Rhino, let's think about this. In the state of Mississippi, the per capita income is 52. The median household income is about 56. He wants the minimum wage to be 50. Here's where folks like Khanna get it wrong. Democrats believe there's just this large contingent of workers that are earning the federal minimum wage, right? They can't raise a family on that, right? None are. It turns out, when you do a little digging, and by the way, to government data, the Bureau of Labor Statistics publishes all this information. It turns out it's about 1.5% of the total workforce. And guess what? No surprise, most of them are under the age of 24. So I think a lot of folks out there listening to me, probably like me, sometime, I'm a boomer, I know, have held a minimum wage job as a teenager just to earn a little spending money. Also for me to help out pay college tuition. I started working when I was in the 8th grade. I think I shared this before at the Cotton Bowl, a bowling alley. We call them bowling centers. Out on Lynch Street in southwest Jackson, right down the street from Jackson State University, as a matter of fact. Started working the counter, working in the back for a minimum wage, and I got recruited to go over to Laurel Lanes in North Jackson. And those of you that are familiar with I-55 in Jackson, as you're passing by Northside Drive, you look to the right, you see the Piccadilly Cafeteria. Back behind that L-shaped shopping facility is a building, and that was where Laurel Lanes was located. I started working there in high school for a minimum wage as much as I could during the week. I was, of course, in high school and also playing baseball. And then for 2 summers while I was in college, I worked as a janitor in Laurel Lanes. Would show up when the place would close down about 1 o'clock in the morning, work till 9, 10 o'clock the next morning, clean the whole place up by myself for a minimum wage. But I wasn't raising a family on that. I was 19 years old, trying to make a little money to pay for college. And that's where Khanna and his ilk get this wrong. and to trying to paint this picture that there's just these large number of households in this country who are earning federal minimum wage trying to make ends meet and raise a family. That's just not true. And by the way, last time I checked this, Rhino, the point in our history where the largest percentage of our workforce earned the federal minimum wage was 1979, and it was like 13%. Since then, it's down to about 1.5. And you know why? This is where people on the left especially get it wrong, and sometimes even our friends on the right. Oh, the middle class has just been hollowed out. The reason the middle class has shrunk is because more have moved up into higher income levels. Not down, higher, because of the wealth generated in this country through human innovation. We've created a bunch of opportunity, a bunch of jobs that weren't even a twinkle in the eye back then. It turns out it was 1979. That's when most of our workforce earned the minimum wage. This is a solution looking for a problem. That's the point. The market is the only fair arbiter of prices and wages. Only one. And it should be allowed to do its thing. Let's see, Jason Starkville says, she is the one who's been telling the cops to keep it quiet because make the district look bad. Confirmed from my neighbor who is a fireman. It's a very common thing. Are we talking about the mayor of Starkville there, Jason? I suspect so, because that's what was being discussed earlier by Caleb Sailors at that time. Interesting. Gary from Tishomingo says, Benny Thompson, what a piece of work that guy is. Mike and Fan and Benny Thompson voted against the farm bill because there was no provision in it to line his back pocket. That sounds familiar. I heard that the data center near Lake Caroline caused utilities to spike 6x. That's categorically false. That is 100% false. Not true whatsoever. That is, in fact, there were some people at Lake Caroline that feared that. That's in Madison County, by the way. It's not far from the Canton Amazon Web Services campus, that feared that and actually reached out to me, wanted to meet because I serve on the board. I was heavily involved in bringing this investment to Madison County. And I offered, I'll meet with you. And they declined. Maybe it's because they did a little research and found out that's not the case. So I can also share this. There are 5 buildings that are in production right now. Has anybody seen any problems with their water? Do you hear the sound? You heard anybody complaining about sound? Pollution? Have you seen your utility rates spike as a result? Nope. None of that. So that's with 5 buildings online. And remember, the investment has to be $10 billion by 2027 to meet Amazon's obligations under its agreement with the state and the county, of course, for the various features of that agreement. And they're well ahead of schedule, by the way. So, yeah, that's absolutely not true. And by the way, you know this, Rhino, Entergy serves a big footprint. It wouldn't just be Lake Caroline. That's not the way that works. And if they did that, the PSC's got to sign off on it. You heard anything about that?
And if it were true, don't you think the Democrat water-toting media would have been all over it?
Totally true. Of course. Yep. John in Pontotoc says the College Board of Mississippi needs to be held accountable, and I think what John's talking about is these DEI programs and other issues in our colleges and universities related to that. I agree. It's a tough deal. There are usually a few protesters in front of Trent Kelly's office in Tupelo over these things, says Chris in Tupelo. I'm not surprised. You made that point. Like I said,
it's the same losers that have absolutely nothing productive to do with their time.
Yeah. I'm not surprised at that at all. Aren't there a bunch of movies that say it's a bad idea? Coming right back in the Element Well studio.
From the C Group.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
Now, on to the real part.
Dynamite!
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
I was a rebel from the day I left school. Grew my hair long and broke all the rules. I'd sit and listen to my records all day, with big ambitions of when I could play. My parents taught me what life was about.
So you remember yesterday we were talking with Ted Kendall. His family, by the way, I didn't go into it yesterday. They are a longtime Mississippi family, very successful agricultural operation in west central Mississippi. And we had him in because he gives the perspective of someone who is on the ground related to the agricultural industry. So, you know that, Rhino. Rather than talking to a politician, no disrespect to them, but when it comes to what challenges, what concerns are facing farmers, our state being an agricultural-oriented state, I think it's good to hear from someone in the farming business, generational farming business, in Mr. Kendall's case. And you remember yesterday I asked him, is China honoring their end of the deal, the trade deal? He said no. He didn't even hesitate, did he? He said flat out no, they're not. And, of course, we're not surprised because they have a history of not meeting their obligations in negotiated deals. It's almost like in the DNA of their economy, their system. They just lie. They cheat. It's inherent to communism, is it not, to a great extent? Well, it turns out now the president says the EU is not complying with the deal that was cut with them. And so he just announced, while we're on the air here, European vehicles, a tariff will be levied on them starting next week, those that flow into this country, 25%. 25%. He said the EU, the bloc, is not complying with the deal that it agreed to. What is wrong with these people? You agree to a deal, you honor it, you oblige it, you comply. It's real simple. And once you do this, you cannot be trusted. Now, we all have always known that China cannot be trusted. In fact, they probably lie and breach agreements more than they tell the truth and comply with agreements. It's not just like a slip-up. It's routine for them. A little shocked at the EU, though. You'd expect more out of them. So that's disappointing. But the president says, okay. I mean, he's putting it on them. Now, me, I will say this. That's an appropriate use of tariffs. We have a trade deal. You're not honoring it. We're going to hit you. We're going to bust you. Get in line. Makes sense. And I believe once they start complying, he'll rescind those tariffs. That's what I believe. The prediction markets, well, they are predicting the midterm elections. Some folks are certainly using the prediction markets for that purpose. In November of 25, that was about 6 months ago, the prediction markets showed that there was a 58% chance the Democrats would win the House, an 86% chance now is what they're predicting. So from 11/1/25 to 4/26/26, it went from the prediction market 58% probability of the Democrats prevailing and gaining control of the House to 86%. That's a huge swing in a short period of time. On the Senate side, this is the one that really shocked me. In November, the prediction was that 72% chance the Republicans would maintain control of the Senate. Now it's 50-50, split right down the middle. So this is why I think we should move forward with a reconciliation package, another one. Looks like that is possible from a rules perspective, but don't be skinny, go big. What I'd like to see happen is indexing of capital gains for inflation, perhaps increasing the exemption for estate taxes, maybe eliminating estate taxes altogether. We need serious policy concerning the outrageous fraud that's been detected. And that's a matter of just getting serious about creating and implementing the systems. It's a systems issue, 100% a systems issue. This revelation we've learned about in the last week about SNAP fraud and all these people that are driving luxury vehicles, it looks to me like you pretty much just apply for SNAP benefits and they send them to you. I don't see a whole lot of vetting between the application and the actual transmission of benefits. We need some effort on health care, the health savings account issue that is talked about, the allowance of more skinny plans, association plans. And even though some of the cuts, a lot of the cuts that the Doge team found, that looks like that's coming in at about $100 billion, which is a bunch of money. That's still going on. Those policies that led to those cuts are still in place. They're not permanent because they're in executive orders. They're coming from the administrative agencies. You could codify that by including them in this legislation. I'd like to see all that happen. Go big. Are you familiar with the REINS Act? That would require voting action on the part of the U.S. House and Senate before major regulations take effect. We've talked about this extensively, that these agencies have gone rogue, that they've essentially become the fourth branch of government, gone rogue, and the Congress passes law, signed into law by the president. They're responsible for essentially implementing those laws, but they take it too far. The courts had to slap them many times, the Supreme Court, when cases arise contesting these agency overreach, extending beyond what the law allows. And I've said before, I still believe this, we're more affected by the faceless bureaucrats that run these agencies than the people we send to Washington from the ballot box. So this act's called the REINS Act that would require this additional step before they just go crazy and create regulations. The Democrats, no surprise, they filibustered this. They don't want that. I'd like to see this happen at the state level as well. Now, there are some states that have done it. Tennessee just added to the list. They're number 14. 14 states. No surprise that they're in the Mountain West. Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, South Dakota, Kansas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Florida, North Carolina, Kentucky, West Virginia. They have laws on the books that basically say that agencies at the state level, they can't promulgate, create regulations and policies either without the legislative branch signing off on it. I think it's a good idea that we should strongly consider here in this state. Please explain to me why gas oil prices are so high if only 10% of our oil comes from the Middle East. And it's a question that comes up a lot, and it's a legitimate question. And it's real simply, it's because oil is a globally traded commodity, and the price of oil is set in the markets, and that the markets are global. So if you think about global demand relative to global supply, when global supply is decreased, in this case, by about $20 million a barrel, 20 million barrels a day. That's the amount that was flowing through the Strait of Hormuz. That's about 20% of daily global production. Less supply. Demand is not really tempered that much since then. It hasn't come down in a proportionate way. That drives the price up. Now, it is possible that oil could be sold outside of those markets. And that's kind of the way Iran was servicing and providing oil to China. But in general, in this country, we have two grades of oil, the Brent and the West Texas Intermediate. Those are two different markets. And so it's a global phenomenon where supply and demand on the global stage dictates the price. It's very fungible. It's not isolated. It's not restricted to like boundaries. Coming right back with the final segment of Middays.
Hi, I'm...
You know what that means.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
We'll do it live.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
It's Friday, I'm free again. I got my motor running.
That's a staple here on Middays as we enter the final segment of the week. I sent Rhino some sound, but I'm going to hold off on it. We're going to do it Monday, and it's it pretty much refutes this leftist that kind of attempted to refute me on my assertion that the education community is largely dominated by leftists, and that these protests occurring across the country are real today. They are well funded by sources that seem to think this is in their best interests. The George Soroses of the world, and
it's Alex Soros now.
Son, right? And it might even be China behind it as well. We're learning more about how they're getting involved in things like this. So, but all I know is that I think you're putting your head, as Rhino likes to say, up your butt if you're not paying attention to and opening your eyes to a fairly large number of people, especially in the education community, that are all in on this stuff. And I think these polls are largely accurate that say that our young people are getting indoctrinated with this line of thinking as well. And they're in the streets. And in the case of Madison, Wisconsin, a capital city in a state in this country, they shut down the schools today so they could all go out and protest against immigration crackdowns and billionaires. Oh, man. So Dave says from Monticello, why I'm in agreement with you about such a high raising of the minimum wage. You spoke about how you work and how you paid for college. And what you made then would not make a drop in the bucket for what it costs to go to college today. I think a small increase in minimum wage is long overdue. I totally disagree, Dave, and I'll explain to you the difference then. When I was going to college in 1976, you're right. It didn't cost that much as it does today. And secondly, you're right, the amount I earned working for minimum wage in the summers wouldn't cover that cost. And by the way, it wouldn't cover it back then either. I was trying to make some money to help my parents who were paying, who had been saving and were paying for my education. And my father was a salesman, 100% commission. He didn't work, he didn't sell, he made no money. And in the spring of 1976, my brother passed away unexpectedly at the age of 27. And my father felt that he needed to stay closer to my mother during that time period because he traveled for a living, Monday through Friday, and thus his income was dramatically reduced. And I worked to help out. That was the bottom line. But here's the big difference, Dave. There's so much money available to go to school now in the form of student loans and grants and scholarships and all sorts of stuff. That didn't exist back then. And guess what that did? Your Honor, you've talked about it. That just drove the price up. That's why it wouldn't cover it today. It's the government that screwed it up. So increasing the minimum wage, we need to do that so people can go to college? No. There's more money than you can dream of available. In fact, a lot of those people ain't paying it back. That's a big problem. What's it, $1.5 trillion? The government loan? That didn't exist back then. But that also drove the price up. That is not a reason to raise the minimum wage. And with such a small number of people earning it, and all those being, I seriously doubt those that are earning minimum wage are doing it to pay for their college. I did it to help pay for college. And I did mention that, yeah, it turns out that according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, most people earning the minimum wage in this country are in that 18 to 24 range. That's not what the Democrats tell us. They tell us, oh, they don't have a living wage to take care of their families. Right. Nobody's making that. The only fair arbiter of wages is the market. Period. End of story. Let's see. Jason Starkville says the hub always has the blue hairs and queers out there. Jerry in Pontotoc said, I started work when I was 7 years old in 1962. I picked cotton for 2 cents a pound and it didn't kill me. I hear you. Hard work doesn't kill anybody. Ben from Madison points out $3.99 for unleaded gas in Madison, over $5 for diesel. Really hoping for a swift end to the war in Iran, but that may be wishful thinking. You have to imagine many House Republicans are hoping for the same 100%. I totally agree with you on that, Ben. And I've said that many times on the program. I'm with the president. We can't have a nuclear Iran. He made that clear again. And he even said, hey, look, as recent as within the last 24 hours, he's made the statement, the price of gas will fall rapidly once we get through this, and Iran won't have a nuclear weapon, but anything short of that's unacceptable. I'm paraphrasing a bit, but that's essentially his message. Wiley Walker from Newton wanted to know how the Dutch tulip bulb bubble might compare to the current U.S. stock market. Yeah, the thing to keep in mind there, Wiley, as we're getting out of here today, is that's a description of 100% speculative investing. And what we're having today is it's somewhat speculative. All investment is.
It was speculative for ornamental furnishing.
That's why it's called the Dutch tulip. But yeah, it was
not for ownership and productive companies.
These are companies that are all making a ton of money. I actually think they're undervalued. I saw a price target of 900 on Meta this morning within 18 months. Out of here. Have a great weekend. Stay safe and God bless.
SuperTalk Mississippi Media Production.